It started with a whisper, faint, distant, almost like the wind brushing against my ear. I was living alone at the time, a small apartment on the edge of town. Rent was cheap because, according to the neighbors, no one stayed there for long. They said the previous tenant left in the middle of the night. No one knew why. I didn't believe in ghost stories. I was a rational guy, logical, grounded, and tired of hearing nonsense. Until that first night. It was around 2:30 a.m. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone when I heard it. A soft, trembling whisper from the empty guest room next door. "Can you hear me?" I froze. The walls were thin, sure, but this voice wasn't coming from another apartment. It came from inside mine. I got up, heart pounding, and slowly approached the door to the guest room. The light inside was off, but the door stood slightly open, just enough for a sliver of darkness to leak out. I whispered back, "Who's there?" No answer, only silence, followed by the faint creak of a chair moving inside. I stepped back. Every instinct told me not to open that door, but curiosity always wins. When I finally pushed it open, the room was empty. No one there. Just a single old wooden chair in the corner, gently rocking by itself. And then the whisper came again. "Don't open the door." Next time, the chair stopped moving, and the light bulb above me flickered violently before going dark. I stood in silence, the air suddenly cold. It felt like someone was standing right behind me. I didn't turn around. The next morning, I convinced myself it was a dream. But when I checked my phone camera that night, I saw something that made my stomach twist. At 2:34 a.m., the camera on my phone, which I always kept charging beside my bed, had recorded on its own a 5-second clip. I pressed play. The video showed my hallway, the guest room door half open, and in the darkness beyond it, something moved. Not a person, not a shadow. Something tall, bending unnaturally, like it was too long for the space it occupied. And then, just before the clip ended, the same voice whispered through the speaker, "You shouldn't have opened it." I dropped my phone. My skin went cold. That night, I locked the guest room door. I even pushed the chair under the handle just in case. But around 3 a.m., I woke to a knock. 1, 2, 3, from inside the room. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, the door was wide open again, and the chair was back in the middle of the room. On the third day, I decided to ask around. My next-door neighbor, Mrs. Lang, an old woman who'd lived there for decades, opened her door just a crack when I knocked. Before I could even speak, she said, "You're in apartment 6B, aren't you?" I nodded. Her wrinkled face went pale. "You need to leave. That room, it doesn't like to be opened." She told me about the man before me, a quiet teacher named Michael. He lived there for 3 months before he started hearing voices too. One night, he called the landlord screaming, saying someone was inside the room. When the police arrived, the door was locked from the inside. They broke it open and found the room empty, but the walls were covered in writing, dozens of handprints, and one message carved deep into the plaster. "It's not the room that's empty." Mrs. Lang looked at me and whispered, "Whatever you do, don't answer when it calls your name." I laughed nervously, pretending not to believe her, but deep down I was already terrified, because the night before, the whisper had already said my name. That night I moved my bed into the living room. I told myself it was just for comfort, but deep down, I was scared of sleeping near that door again. Around midnight, the silence felt heavier than usual. The air was thick, almost breathing. And then came the whisper. "You can hear me now, can't you?" I froze. It was clearer, closer, like the voice was right behind the door, waiting. I grabbed my phone flashlight and crept toward the guest room. The door was open again, though I knew I'd locked it that morning. The chair was gone. Instead, on the wall, scratched deep into the paint, were 3 words. I let him in. The whisper came again, only louder this time, no longer faint or ghostly. It was almost human. "You opened it once. Open it again." Suddenly my phone light flickered and died. The hallway light turned on by itself, dim, yellow, flickering. And then I saw it. A dark shape standing at the end of the hall, tall, motionless, head slightly tilted. It wasn't a person. It was something wearing the shape of one. My breath caught in my throat. When I blinked, it was gone. Only the echo of the whisper remained, fading down the hall like wind through an empty. The next day I called the landlord, pretending to be curious about the apartment's history. He hesitated, then sighed. "Look, I don't like talking about it," he said. "But there was a teacher, Michael. After he disappeared, his sister came to collect his things. She left behind a journal. I convinced him to let me see it. When I opened the notebook, the first few pages were normal. Lesson plans, student names. But halfway through, the handwriting changed. Messy, erratic. The voice comes from the walls. It wants to be heard. The room isn't empty. It's waiting. The final page was smeared with something brownish red. Dried blood, maybe. And one last line was written in shaky letters. "If you hear your name, don't answer." That night I left the apartment and stayed in a motel. But around 3 a.m. my phone buzzed. No caller ID. I hesitated, and then picked up. The voice on the other end whispered, "Why did you leave me?" The line went dead. I turned off the lights, heart racing, and then realized something horrifying. The voice didn't come from the phone. It came from the closet behind me. I moved out the next morning. I packed everything, left the keys on the counter, and promised myself I'd never look back. For a few days things were quiet, peaceful even. But peace doesn't last when something follows you. The whisper returned, not from the apartment this time, but from the corners of my new home. It started faint, through the vents, through the cracks in the ceiling. Then one night, as I brushed my teeth, the mirror fogged over, and in the condensation a message appeared. "You brought it with you." I stumbled backward, dropping the toothbrush. When I looked again, the message was gone. But the whisper wasn't, "You let me out." That's when I realized the room hadn't been haunted. It had been a prison, and I was the fool who set whatever it was free. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that tall shadow standing in the hallway. I heard footsteps pacing the floor, soft but deliberate, like it was searching for me. I set up cameras around the apartment, hoping to capture proof. But when I checked the footage the next morning, every camera had turned itself toward the wall at exactly 3:07 a.m., and in one frame, one single frame, I saw a reflection in the glass, my own face, but smiling. When I wasn't, that was the moment I knew it wanted more than just to be seen. It wanted to replace me. That night I heard the voice one final time. "It's your turn to stay in the room." The door to my bedroom slammed shut. Lights flickered. The air grew cold enough for my breath to show. And then, silence. When the police arrived 3 days later, they found my apartment empty. The door was locked from the inside. All the lights were off except one, the guest room. In the corner sat the same old wooden chair, gently rocking. On the wall, written in my handwriting, were the same words carved years before by Michael. "It's not the room that's empty." And from the hallway camera, at exactly 3:07 a.m., a faint whisper was recorded. "Can you hear me? That apartment has been empty ever since. But the landlord says every new tenant reports the same thing." A quiet voice just before dawn, calling their name from the empty room. The soft, eerie music fades. Whispering echoes grow faint. If you're still listening, make sure you don't open the door tonight. And before you go, subscribe for more terrifying stories like this one. Like this video if you enjoyed the chills. Share it with someone who dares to listen. Because the next whisper might be calling their name. Final whisper. "Can you hear me?"